All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're ready to kick off our panel discussions. A panel discussion this afternoon with the three gentlemen who will take us through their thoughts and insights on digital trade and e-commerce, and we're focusing on the theme unlocking strength in our network. I guess first of all, just to kick off the conversation, and thankfully there's only three of us, so I will attempt to keep it as tight and as short as possible so we can also gain time for the breakaway sessions, but also make sure we get the maximum output out of our conversation this afternoon. So I guess this first things first, give us your thoughts on what you see as the status of both digital trade and e-commerce in the different spaces that you play in. Any first takers?
Okay, maybe I can go first. So I think across Africa, in terms of status, the different countries have made different levels of progress from a sort of enablement for e-commerce and digital trade. And this is across several vectors. So you will find that if you look at what the critical success factors for digital trade and e-commerce are, if you start with infrastructure, you will find that people require internet access and devices to be able to access services digitally. So again, different countries have made different levels of progress. I think in Kenya here, we've got a very good penetration from an internet access point of view. And also smartphone penetration continues to be on the rise. I think the last time I checked, it was in the north of 50, 60%. So first of all, from a digital infrastructure enablement perspective, that's where I would say we are. If you look at some of the other enablers regarding availability of channels, so this is e-commerce channels, again, some level of progress made in different countries. In Kenya here, we've got a little bit of platforms available, and that continues to be on the rise. As far as payments infrastructure is concerned, which is critical enabler for digital trade and e-commerce, I think, again, in the East Africa region, we continue to make significant progress with availability of payment gateways and APIs to enable the e-commerce players sort of facilitate the process of access or ability to make for payments from an e-commerce perspective. Where I think we continue to struggle, I guess, is digital skills, both digital skills from a market literacy point of view, as well as availability of skills in the market to drive this growth. We have significant challenges, I think, regarding availability of cross-border sort of enabling payments, but that is continuing to be addressed with AfCFTA, and some of the platforms have started to roll out. So from my perspective, different levels of progress, again, largely driven by the critical enablers. And from a financial services perspective, we continue to work across the industry in Kenya and across the region to ensure that we're able to provide digital payments rails that can support e-commerce players and customers to engage in commerce. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dennis. Dennis is the Group Technology Officer, Director at Kenya Commercial Bank Group, and I guess we'll be coming to you just to find out also the role of the financial sector in, increasing digital or e-commerce trade and what KCB has done, especially within the region, as the continent works towards the AfCFTA. All right, I'd like to now move to yourself. From the space that you sit, what would you say the state of digital trade and e-commerce is in Malawi?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. A lot has been said this morning from the keynote address by the president. It was a great speech, and I think it provides quite a good framework within we can discuss these issues. And there are also similarities. Most of the issues that have been shared here, Malawi is also going through the same experiences. Nevertheless, I should say we still have quite a mile. Malawi is on the path to digitalization, so we can enable e-trade and e-commerce to to be successful, not only within our boundaries, but also as part of the entire region. Now, briefly, maybe to say, for us, I think we have focused on a number of issues. Firstly, making sure that the legal and policy environment is quite conducive, enabling, but also coming up with a strategy that would really show us where we are going, making strategic choices. For example, now we have a Malawi digital economy strategy, which has got 3 strategic choices, core digital. Some of the issues, my colleague here has already mentioned them. For example, ensuring that there is network access. Our target is to increase internet usage from 43% in 2023 to 80% in 2026. But also device access. I think this has been an ongoing, issue, dominating the discussions. I often think about a woman, a man, or maybe a youth in the remote parts of Africa where they don't have a smartphone. They have a gadget, a device, which they can only use for, making phone calls, but doesn't enable them to do a lot. So I think this is also a mile that we have to cover even in Malawi. And currently the ownership is relatively low, about 20%, and we want it to go up to 80% in 2026. Yeah, but also digital services. He touched on digital services. I may not repeat the same for time's sake, but if we also talk about digital solutions, our digital economy strategy is also focusing on providing solutions for different sectors that can enhance e-trade and commerce. For example, in agriculture, by increasing the adoption of agricultural services and access to agricultural technology. For example, currently Malawi is on the path of re-establishing, mega farms, and huge hectareages have been dedicated to that. A lot of capital has been invested in mega farms, but we cannot do them without digital solutions. And so this is one of the. Similarly, also in the health sector, we want to increase the life expectancy by additional 2 years, supporting efficient resource allocation, for example, e-health facilities where you can do diagnostic remotely, and also you can have a database on particular issues, including diagnostic tests. And finally, maybe digital trade. Our goal is to double ICT service exports to 4%. That is creating 50,000 new jobs in digitally traded services. So this is just a bit about where we are going to. But we are steadily on the path of digitalization. And this is why my ministry has been renamed to Ministry of Information and Digitalization to show the focus on the seriousness and the commitment that we have as a country. Thank you.
All right, Honorable Chiamwaka, thank you so much. Joel, we'll come to you. Estonia has been a subject of curiosity by many Kenyans. Do tell us a little bit about that, and to address the question, the current state of digital trade and e-commerce, and perhaps address the nexus of Kenya and Estonia in as far as that is concerned.
Thank you very much. Yes, so it's been a hot boiling point for a while, and this is because Estonia took a deliberate path to look for potential partners around the world. So for those of you who might know, Estonia is only 1.3 million people, so versus a population of 55 million people in Kenya. So we are looking at what can we export in terms of our knowledge, and what have we been able to do over the last 20 years since we regained our independence. And one of the things that Estonia did, because if you look at the neighbors and the European states, so Estonia is a smaller cousin in terms of that, in terms of size. But we took a deliberate direction, which is digital would be our biggest driver. So in Estonia, 20 years ago, we decided to do something called the Tiger Leap. And the Tiger Leap meant that every child who was going to school received a gadget, which was a computer, And then we made sure that the infrastructure in terms of connectivity was available. So that means within the last 20 years, digital skills have just been growing. And that means that with digital skills, as my colleague said, then digital trade starts to happen. So we are looking at what is the nexus in terms of Kenya and Estonia, because Kenya's ambitious digital transformation is the same thing we thought about 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So how can we do that? And now that brings us to the conversation of what opportunities may be there and what do we think digital trade is. So again, look at the Kenya scenario. And I'm Kenyan, by the way, so I might be speaking like an Estonian, but I'm Kenyan. Look at our payment gateways, for example, very mature. We don't have payment gateways in terms of mobile in Estonia. We usually use cards, right? A lot of people don't carry cash anymore, it's cards. But how many people can actually access a card in Kenya? How many people are unbanked? So that means they're not able to access cards. So what was the solution? Mobile money came into play. In Estonia, we're now thinking about mobile money, and how does that look for us? So again, when you start looking at digital trade and what is happening, we actually are learning from the Kenyan experience, which is a very, very, very mature digital market, right? Despite what people may think, it's very mature. When you had the CS in the morning talk about infrastructure in terms of fiber and all those things, Estonia got those. Everywhere you go, you'll find a Wi-Fi spot. In Kenya, we're doing, 25,000 Wi-Fi spots? So you can actually see that the conversations are interrelated. So for us as Estonia, we're looking at what did we learn? We are not coming to impact what we learned. We're actually coming to co-create what the next steps for Kenya look like. So for us, that's why we are in this conversation. And if we do that well, then digital trade becomes the easiest thing that you can actually deliver, because everyone is connected. As Minister said, everyone has a smartphone, so they can make a transaction, they can make a call, they can do banking on their phone. I can't remember the last time I went to a bank, sorry. I don't even know why they still have branches, because most of us actually get our money through mobile channels. So I think that is where we are. And we're looking forward to more of these conversations and see how Estonia and Kenya can talk to each other and learn from each other.
All right, thank you so much, Joel. Emily, you're welcome to the panel discussion. We're having a conversation around the state of digital trade and e-commerce. And of course, the AfCFTA, has mentioned several times that technology sits firmly on the driver's seat in as far as increasing trade across the region. What would you say are some of the low-hanging fruit from a technology perspective that we can begin to get at or get to in order to hasten our race towards the AfCFTA?
Okay, thank you very much, and my apologies for being a bit late. I think there was a bit of a confusion where we should be. I speak on behalf of His Excellency Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the AfCFTA, who unfortunately was not able to join us today, but he sent me to represent him. And for us, maybe the main important thing we can already say has been achieved by the continent will be the fact that in the last Assembly of Heads of States and Government that was held in February in Addis Ababa, there was the adoption of the protocol on digital trade. So, and the protocol on digital trade is actually forming the foundation of the legal framework that we are going to use as a continent to be able to trade with one another. And I think that is important because this year you're focused on connecting Africa. So to be able to connect Africa, we need to have harmonized laws and regulations that are transparent and we can be able to interconnect. So maybe just to mention a few of the things that are key that are in the protocol. One of them is that we're talking about digital inclusion. And I think digital inclusion has been one of the key things that has been talked about in this forum so far. And here we have a different approach where we are seeing what can trade do for us to ensure that the MSMEs are also involved in this conversation, and to also ensure that we have the right instruments. And to that end, we are actually currently, just last week, we had a meeting where we were looking at the annexes, and one of the key annexes is digital ID. So for us to be able to have digital IDs that interconnect, so each country develops their own digital ID, but then it is possible to interconnect with the other countries. So one of the key articles is also on interconnectivity. Then the other key element is the issue of cross-border data transfer, because to be able to do any payment, you have to be able to exchange data, because there is no payment without exchange of data. But what are the laws and regulations that we have in place to ensure that we are able to actually exchange data among ourselves? So most of the countries now have data protection institutions, especially for personal data. So we look at how then do we ensure that we are also going to have interoperability among the different countries. And of course, a third one, which is so important, is digital payments. So how are we going to be able to do digital payment across borders? We heard from Safaricom earlier that they are now in 8 countries. So we can actually learn from them to say, how have you been able to do that? Is it mutual recognition, and is it country by country? But now with the protocol, you can actually be able to then do it wholesale, if I may say it that way. So we have a number of already hanging fruits that we can extend. The example of M-Pesa, mobile money, interconnectivity, even at the national level, you have been able to do the interconnectivity between M-Pesa, let me say Safaricom and Airtel, to be able to send money between the two companies. So if we can be able to extend that to the rest of the continent now with the foundation that has been set by the protocol on digital trade, I think we will be able to move a bit more faster. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Emily. Honorable Chiamwaka, I'd like to come to you now, and the word collaboration between, of course, government, private sector has, come out quite strongly throughout the conversations today. And I would like to get your view on what policies or regulatory frameworks are needed to support the development of digital trade and e-commerce ecosystems.
It's raining, and I hope I got your question correctly. Yeah, but I think you were talking about the policies and legal framework that, yeah. Well, let me just give an example of what we've done, apart from the strategy, the digital economy strategy that I shared. But, a national digitalization policy is also very key, very important. And in Malawi, we have it in place. And it is strategy, it prioritizes network infrastructure, like my colleagues also alluded to, and most importantly, in the rural and marginalized areas, where these technologies are still yet to reach. So if you have that policy that guides you and provides you a framework, I think this is very important. But also data protection, because as my last colleague, the last speaker spoke, e-trade and commerce require a lot of exchange of data. And today we talk about open data. And, but you can't just leave data as it is. You need to manage data. And so legal provisions like data protection, these are very key. We just had ours, accented to this year, and we have it in place. But also cyber security laws. We are talking among ourselves as PSs this morning, and we found out that one of the most common issues that we share also, and we really want to do, is about cyber security. And I remember PS Tinui John actually was talking about, say, no, not cyber security, cyber, as in discipline as a field, but security. So apart from having a localized or contextualized or national cyber security law, we also need a harmonized one, an integrated one across the region, so that data is protected. And I think for me, this is very, very important. But also, we still have postal services very, very key to commercialization, to e-trade, to e-commerce. And in my country, the postal services are still on. In fact, they're widespread across even in the rural areas. But now, because of the digital economy that strategy we have, government has just approved a bailout strategy, turnaround strategy for the post office. So we can digitalize it and, get it on the path to e-commerce and e-trade. So these are some of the policies I think that I think are very important, but also policies that can guide one network. For example, previously when I come to Kenya, I go to Zambia, I could just carry one SIM card for Airtel. And I come here, I could make a call home, back home, or anywhere where Airtel was, without a hassle at all. No need to buy another SIM card. But that is gone. And I think if we can bring back one network, that would be awesome. So we need policies and maybe laws that can enable, make those provisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Dennis, I'll come to you now. Perhaps, from the perspective of KCB, there's a mention of security, around online transactions. You've talked about payments, not just within the country, but inter-country as well. And I'm just curious about what you see as the factors that influence consumer trust and confidence in online transactions.
Thank you for that. We're a financial institution, and first of all, banking or financial services is a business of trust. So this is something we take very seriously. And it's something that we've actually implemented and have working very well within all of our channels and platform. So if you look at, what specifically about your question, what drives the trust? Trust is driven, by the knowledge by the user or the consumer or the business that you're dealing with that whatever funds they have with you are well secured, and if any transaction is to happen, it has to be authorized through the various channels. So as far as KCB is concerned, of course, we're present in 7 countries with payment trails, both for our banks on our channels, as well as third-party rails we offer through banking as a service, through APIs to our fintech partners who power e-commerce. We've got a very elaborate security infrastructure that ensures that for every interaction that the customer is having with us is very well secured, and the customer can be sure that their funds are safe. So it's really about creating an environment where, as a user or a customer, that I feel that every transaction or every access to my bank account or wallet is very well secured. So that's what we have in place, and we continue to do this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dennis. Joel, I'll come to you now. Given the success that you have talked about in as far as Estonia's digital space has come along, what do you see as some of the opportunities, especially given the fact that we've got governments in the room that are creating an enabling space for technology companies and entrepreneurs to take advantage of opportunities that are available? What do you currently see as the opportunities that digital trade and e-commerce present for African economies?
Thank you. Just before I go into your question, just to add up to what the minister said, like the postal system is going to be a success on a centralized national addressing system, which is something most countries are trying to, so that where my address is, you can deliver. I don't have to, the guy of Jumia doesn't have to call me and ask me, send me a PIN and all those things. So those are things that I think if we do them right, then we shall be able to move forward. To Dennis's comment, and I'll add on to that something that has happened in Estonia. In Estonia, we have one single source of truth of my ID, which is a digital ID. So that one ID, whether I go to the bank or I go to a shop, or I go to my e-citizen in Kenya, it is one. In Kenya and in the African markets, we have various points where our information is collected today, and we're not sure whether that collection at that place was the right one or not. And that leads to my answer, which is if these things are done better, one, market access. So we shall be able to open that bigger access, which is what all these trade agreements are asking us to do. So that's an opportunity that immediately will show itself if we just get, in my view, as you asked, policies and the fundamentals right. The other thing is we see some of the African economies, I think in Kenya we say copy-paste. If I open a Safaricom shop here, the next place is a Safaricom shop. We want to diversify our economies. What new things will happen from digital trade? So I don't have to be that brick and mortar that everyone else is doing. If I open and to successful, even me, I'll try. So every corner you find a tailor, a bank. So if we can diversify some of those things in terms of our economies, I think digital trade is able to help us. Again, from a digital perspective, it actually opens more conversations about collaboration. So how do we collaborate more? 55 states in Africa. In the EU, we are 27 member states. As the minister said, if I have an EU SIM card, the calling rate is the same across EU. So why can't we do that for the African economies? Obviously, in Africa, we are in competition with our own selves. So if Airtel in Kenya is putting a rate of 2 shillings, in Tanzania it will be 4 shillings, and then I have to roam in Tanzania, and I'm still within the East African community. I think some of those things, if we change them, opportunities start working out, because I am not going to spend my time trying to call you on WhatsApp because you're in Tanzania, because I have to save on my bundle. So I think if we start looking at those, and I'm just looking at a few of those opportunities, and the last one for me is obviously the logistics. Once we get this right, logistics becomes the easiest thing, because then I can be able to move goods and services across borders, which has been a hurdle for us. If today I want to export something to Rwanda, the number of border posts, the number of documents I have to have, because I have to pass through 3 or 4 countries, that if we can actually get some centralized way of doing things within our communities, whether it's SADC, EAC, and the rest, I think then opportunities start to grow. So those are the first things that would come to mind in terms of what opportunities the digital space would actually help us with.
All right, thank you, Joel. I'll take a final question from Emily, and thereafter a very quick 1-minute closing remark from each of my panelists so that we can make way for the breakaway sessions. So Emily, final question, still speaking about opportunities. What do you see as the opportunities that exist for African businesses to participate in global value chains?
Thank you very much, and I think I'll do like him and follow up on his question first before I move to mine. And it's really to speak about and it's also part of answering your question, is dealing with the opportunities that digital trade brings. And one of the key ones is trade facilitation. Now, you may think that it is bad in East Africa when moving goods from, let's say, Mombasa to Rwanda. But the number of days have reduced significantly due to technology. And this is because we already have agreed among ourselves, and our revenue authorities actually do speak to each other electronically. They are actually able to follow and track a truck that leaves from Mombasa to Burundi or to Rwanda or to Uganda. And they have a very simplified way of color coding and knowing from their map that truck is for which country. So they have a very sophisticated system that has already been developed, and that is something that we are also working on in terms of West Africa, Central Africa, so that we connect the whole of Africa when it comes to trade facilitation. Maybe just a quick one on a program that we are working on that we are calling the Digital Trade Corridor. And the Digital Trade Corridor is actually an initiative by the president of Zambia. And Malawi is actually one of the countries that is meant to be part of it. And one of the key things that the presidents have said, they want no-stop border posts. Now, no-stop border posts means that we have to utilize a lot of technology to ensure that it is smart gates when you come to the border. If your documents are in line, then you just pass through. And that will be instrumental for our businesses to transport goods and services. And then the second one is movement of people. Kenya has now started implementing the ETA. Now, if we can have countries speaking to one another and have digital IDs that are interoperable, and then we ensure that business people can then easily be able to cross the borders in the continent, then they'll be able to trade easier. Digital signatures. I saw an advertisement earlier on Kenya is now implementing digital signatures. That is also part of what we have set out some legal framework in the protocol on digital signatures, e-invoicing, all those key instruments that are needed to facilitate businesses are already being handled now under the protocol. And if we can accept each other's e-signatures across borders, then it means we don't even need to travel so much to be able to clinch the deals. We can then be able to sit in your house and actually be able to clinch any business deal that is available. So if we can only be able to do these things cross-border and implement this protocol that we have signed on, I think we shall be able to facilitate more trade, and there'll be more opportunities. And just maybe a last one, just for a point of e-commerce. One of the key things, and now following from the PS on the post offices, is to assist post offices, and this is the last mile delivery and the logistics that are concerned. And most of the countries now are changing the model for the post offices to ensure that they're able to move with technology to be able to provide services, and of course having digital addresses is the first thing to be able to have that last mile delivery. So a lot of capacity building is also required to ensure that most of our post offices can actually re-engineer themselves to now use technology and move to become, to use the platforms and deliver the last mile part of logistics. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Emily. So 1 minute maximum. Closing remarks. Honorable Chiamwaka.
Well, thank you. Maybe let me round it up by just sharing very tidbits about some of the things maybe that are admirable in terms of trade and e-commerce. Our focus, as I said, has been so much in the rural area. And for now, we are installing about 58 towers for communication in the rural areas. 30 have already been installed, giving access to rural people, to connectivity. But also currently about 500 government institutions have been connected, free public Wi-Fi, and 30 sites, including airports in Malawi. So you find, and that's still part of the infrastructure development in terms of digital technology. Perhaps most importantly, in the morning, there was a discussion about making government electronic, paperless and digital. And I think that's where we are also going in Malawi. And the Minister of Trade, the Malawi government is implementing the National Single Window under the Through Southern Africa Trade and Connectivity Project, SATIP. And this is funded by the World Bank, and 21 MDAs, including the Malawi Revenue Authority, Malawi Bureau of Standards. These are well connected because these are the drivers of e-trade, the drivers of e-commerce. And once they have these digital platforms, they can transact digitally, we know we are home and dry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Dennis?
Thank you. I think I'll use my 1 minute to really just focus on what KCB has done and what we're doing for customers. So one, we're present in 7 countries. So for those of you who are present here with regional businesses, we are happy to serve you. We have We've been enabling cross-border payments through our network for decades, and we continue to do that. We are then utilizing the PAP's AfCFTA integrations to connect the rest of Africa, but as far as the countries we operate in, we are able to offer you a solution, a cross-border solution, to enable you to do business across the region. So that's number one. Number two, for the fintechs in the audience, e-commerce providers, we offer APIs. So we're able to provide you our rails, and this will include APIs essentially to facilitate payments. So anything to do with collections, we're able to support all of you as you power your journey in terms of e-commerce provision. We also recently have stores of value. We, of course, using our platforms, we offer not just bank accounts, but wallets. But with the wallets we have, we're also able to power fintechs who are looking for stores of value to facilitate e-commerce integration within their networks. Other than that, I think my colleague here talked about why we still have branches. I'd like to just respond to that. It would not be right for me not to respond. So, I mean, KCB Regional Powerhouse, in the end, we are here talking about e-commerce, and part of the critical issues is the last mile logistics. So just like e-commerce, financial services also requires distribution. And with our network, 36 million customers across the 7 countries we operate in, more than 1 million merchants and agents, we are providing that physical infrastructure that's able to connect people. And we're redefining the role of a branch and an agent. Increasingly, we've even started having conversations as to whether we can actually solve this logistics problem by utilizing our network of agents as last mile logistic collection points with APIs also available to fintechs and third parties. So essentially, this is what KCB is doing. We continue to power the region, and thanks for the opportunity and for inviting us to this panel. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. Don't worry, I think a few of us still value just walking into a branch and shaking hands with somebody in there. And I could see Emily nodding profusely when you talked about PAPS, because I know it has done quite a bit in enhancing cross-border trade in the region. All right, Joel, we'll come to you 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you very much. I still need to come and see my branch manager once in a while. She sends me texts that she has missed me, so I usually come to the branch and check if the vault is still there. So don't worry, we still need the physical branches, but we are moving away from it. I think mine is very simple. One, these things have been done elsewhere in the world. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to customize for our markets. Don't go to Europe and pick an off-the-shelf Europe solution and come and try and implement. Customize, learn and customize. So as Estonia, that's what we're doing. We are in the country to share knowledge. Now you pick the knowledge and see what works best for you. Our 1.3 million versus 55 million people, we cannot even fathom how to deal with some things. When my guests come and I take them to the rural areas, they're like, where is this? Because they don't have that kind of area to see. Estonia is as big as Kisii County. So if you look at that comparison, 1.3 million people is Westlands. So that's what they are used to. But they have solutions that work for them, and those solutions can then be scalable to other markets. So I think for me, it's looking at what is out there, working on it. She's given some very interesting examples. For example, in Estonia, you have to book to cross the border. You're given your permission and your green channel 24 hours before. You don't have to stop. No one is going to ask you a question. The only person who asks you a question is if you've not applied. So it can happen anywhere. So I think for me, it's sending out the message that we are able to do it. And as Africa, we are so resilient and so versatile and so agile that we can do it better than our colleagues on the international stage. So let's collaborate and work together.
Thank you, Joel. Emily?
Okay, I'll try to keep within the 1 minute, but I agree with him 100% on the customization. Many countries have tried to take M-Pesa to their countries, but it never worked the same way because every country has its specificities that have to be taken care of. And so customization to suit your current situation is very important. Now, we would be amiss if we go without talking about digital skills development. And I think that's one of the key areas that we need to focus on. And this year, the theme of the year for the African Union is actually focused on education. So skills development for inclusion is very important. And I think it's also very important in digital trade, the linkage or the partnership between the private sector and government, because we need digital infrastructure to be able to trade digitally. And who does the infrastructure? It's governments. So governments need to set the right foundations for digital trade to happen. And so it is very important that, that we have that partnership. I would also be amiss if I don't talk about the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, because I've had the colleague from KCB mention it. And this is one of the key initiatives between the AfCFTA, that's the African Continental Free Trade Area, and the Afrexim Bank to actually support trade facilitation and in this regard payments to make it easier for African countries to pay in their own currencies faster and at a lower cost. So I would encourage those that have not yet joined PAPS to actually join PAPS and get even the capacity building that they need to be able to utilize PAPS. The Secretariat of PAPS and the AfCFTA can actually support to do that. Then the last one is an advertisement. We have a digital trade forum that will be happening in Zambia from the 20th to the 22nd of June. And we really would wish to get the support from all of you, and we welcome you to actually come and talk digital trade, see what are the opportunities and how we can be able to continue the relationship and the interaction to make a connected Africa. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, with that we come to the end of our panel discussion this afternoon. Help me appreciate our panelists by giving them a warm round of applause.